I'm Dean Phillips, and more than anything, I'm a dad, and I'm a really lucky American. I had a wonderful career in business, the blessings of growing up in Minnesota and in the Twin Cities with mentors of all backgrounds that made a big difference in my life. And as a Gold Star son who lost his dad in the Vietnam War, I was particularly lucky to be adopted by a new father when I was about 3 years old. And I know that fine line between advantage and disadvantage, and have lived every day with that gratitude. And as I've seen our country take sides and let politics divide us, I felt I could either complain or I could try to do something about it. I promised my daughters the morning after that 2016 election that I would, and I ran for Congress. My mission was to inspire more people, young and old, of all backgrounds, to become participants, not just complainers. And that's what this entire journey was about. When I was a little kid, I remember my grandma saying all the time, "There's a reason God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. And we're supposed to listen more and talk a little bit less." And I think that has never been more true than it is right now. And that's why I say representation begins with listening.
He met with me and listened to our family story. I asked him for help. And it was so lovely to hear we have this opportunity to seek funding on this community project. When I got the email that the funding had come through, I was speechless. In many wonderful ways, it's pretty hard to get me speechless.
It's my job to hear what's on people's minds. It's not my job to judge it. It's not my job to tell others what they should think. It's my job to listen. And I've loved our quarterly town halls. I think it's really important that voters can access those that represent us. I can say that I've learned so much, not by what I say and how I answer questions, but by the questions themselves and by the comments and by the perspectives of people who have a lot to share. Of all the things we do, and we do a lot of really cool programs to embed me in the community and listen and learn from people, my favorite is On the Job with Dean, where I get to spend about 2 to 3 hours at a small business in the community that has invited me to work with their team. I'll learn about their business, understand their struggles, and most importantly, for me to discover the extraordinary diversity of businesses in our community.
Are you willing to learn to drive a Zamboni today?
I've been preparing my whole life for this moment.
Sure you haven't done this before?
In my dreams. It's Congressman Dean Phillips. You have the unfortunate circumstance of me taking your order.
I don't know what to expect here.
Your bouquet will be twice as beautiful and delivered in half as much time as usual.
Throw a couple shovelfuls in there.
And just kind of sprinkle it?
Yep. And that, my friend, is how you fill a pothole.
And then you don't put your initials in it or anything? That experience of listening has really informed and illuminated the work we've done in Congress. The Paycheck Protection Program, that got its start from listening to small business owners right here in Minnesota's 3rd District.
And got everything that we were eligible for, both rounds of PPP funding.
And it helped, I imagine?
Absolutely.
Considerably good.
The entire 2 years I kept all my salary people on salary.
All 2 years, I love it. Or just take it from Bert, the owner of Lion's Tap, who said, "The heartbeat of America is small business, and we need your help to survive." We passed a bill through the House and the Senate and was signed into law by President Trump. The ADINA Act, recognizing that there are millions of Americans that have allergies and gluten intolerance and some life-threatening that still can't get the information they need about pharmaceutical prescriptions and the ingredient list. So we listened to a wonderful young constituent right here in Minnesota's 3rd District, and we wrote a bill. So Adina, I'm holding a real bill for Congress in my hand, named after you. Will you sign the bill for me?
Wow.
Here you go.
So now we got to do the real work, which is make sure everybody in Congress knows about this and get them on board. Are you going to help me?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. The Pathways to Policing program, listening to our extraordinary law enforcement officers and police chiefs and the community, and recognizing that we need to inspire young Americans to consider careers in law enforcement. Minnesota has shown the country exactly how to do it. Let's invest in a new generation of policing so that we can achieve public safety for all. The number of people that have shared ideas with me that have greatly influenced the work we've done in Congress deserves thanks and gratitude. So thanks to all those who've shared with me, and I'm glad I listened. Radical hospitality. You know, it's something you think about maybe if you go to a fine restaurant or you check into a nice hotel, but I think that should apply to every single interaction we have in our political world as well. My staff and I always try to have a welcoming atmosphere when you come in our office. It doesn't matter what your politics are. I believe in customer service, and I think our U.S. government, both at the federal level, at the state level, and the local level, should focus more on customer service, because when you serve an elected office, you are serving voters and constituents, and by definition, those are consumers as well. We've returned over $42 million to constituents here in Minnesota's 3rd District that were owed money that they couldn't get through normal channels of communication. And that's where we come in, because that is our fundamental job. 3,902 people in this district have received money that was owed them, over $42 million, simply by contacting us and letting us do the customer service work that you deserve as a tax-paying American.
I think I talked to everyone, but nothing happened. And so when I contacted the Phillips office, and literally within a month, I got this back. I can't believe this. I mean, finally someone who can crash through the bureaucracy at the local level.
To those who were helped by my office, know that that wasn't me. That was my wonderful staff that worked so hard behind the scenes, doing the hard work and heavy lifting every day. Thank them. Thank all the people who so tirelessly and quietly and anonymously do such work on behalf of all of us. That's what I learned when I worked in Congress. Perhaps the most emotional and personally gratifying initiative that we've undertaken over the last number of years is our Vietnam veterans pinning ceremonies. It's very personal to me, knowing that these extraordinary men came back from their tours of duty in Vietnam 50 years ago and weren't greeted with admiration or kindness or welcome homes, just the opposite. And I thought we could do something that hadn't been done before, and that is to welcome them home for the first time, to see their reactions, to listen to the words that they share, to see their families, multiple generations, celebrating their loved one who had never received that before is really meaningful. And a reminder to all of us, 1 million Americans have given their lives so that we can live free and have our liberties and have this extraordinary opportunity and these blessings. Cooperation and collaboration is essential to any success. If you're an athlete, if you run a business, if you're in a nonprofit, and certainly if you participate in an elected democracy. When I ran for Congress for the first time in 2018, I did it differently. Some of you might know I bought an old bus, I drove it around, and I put out lawn chairs, and I served coffee, and I invited people to have conversation. And I made a promise to people that I would find you where you're at, that I would open my ears and my heart and listen. And once I was elected to Congress, I wanted to continue that in some shape or form. So we worked with Braver Angels, and they facilitated a series of conversations that we called Common Ground. It was about demonstrating that Democrats and Republicans can and will get to know one another if given the opportunity. I discovered there's remarkable agreement, both on the problems our country faces, but more importantly, on the solutions. And it was a reminder to me how we have to model behavior for our kids, how we have to work together in Congress, because if you bring people together, I guarantee you, we can solve the problems. I think too few Americans know how many wonderful friendships there are between Democrats and Republicans in Washington. Now, you don't see it on the evening cable networks because that's not what they want to portray. That's the entertainment industry. And right now, there sadly isn't an industry that is willing to share the good stories, the collaborative stories, the friendships, the support of one another, because we're all human beings. And some of my greatest relationships in Congress have been with my Republican buddies. And my dear friend Dusty Johnson, the representative from South Dakota, our neighbor. You'd never think that the Minnesota Democrat and the South Dakota Republican would become dear, dear friends. But Dusty and I worked together on the Problem Solvers Caucus during the worst of COVID. We sat down and we put pen to paper and came up with some remarkably collaborative ways to help get our country through it.
From civility, how do you get from that to compromise? It seems like a much harder ideal
Trust.
to reach.
You know, you can't work with people you don't trust, and you can't trust people you don't know. I'd like to think that Dusty helped me represent my conservative constituents better. I like to think that maybe I helped Dusty represent some of his more progressive constituents a little bit better. I learn from him, he learns from me, and if that can be just a tiny bit of a seed that we metaphorically plant at the State Fair and tonight at our Common Ground tour, that's a darn good beginning. It really has been my mission to build bridges, not destroy them, get to know my fellow members, respect them, understand them, and most importantly, create space and place to find solutions to problems. And my dad used to tell me, when two people always agree, you only need one of them. There's a joy and a beauty in hearing from people with different things to share. There are those of us, the 29 Democrats, 29 Republicans on the Problem Solvers Caucus, that are simply applying our kindergarten and Sunday school lessons of collegiality and listening to one another and respecting one another. I was the vice chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus, working with Democrats and Republicans every week to do the tough work, the heavy lifting behind the scenes. We were the workhorses, not the show horses. And that collaboration, it may not be prominent, you're probably not even aware of it, but it happens every day. The restoration of faith in government is not easy to achieve, especially when you have a lot of angertainers, both in Congress and on cable news at night, having us believe we're so much more divided than we really are. And the restoration of faith means a belief in the very people representing you, that they have your best intentions in mind, that they have our country's best interests in mind, that they're not there for their personal gain, but for our collective benefit. And that means leading and representing with transparency, being honest about where we succeed and where we fail, being honest about sometimes not having the answers. And restoration of faith means we all have to take steps to do something a little bit different. It's not something we can legislate. It's not something that's going to take an act of Congress or signature by a president. I think that starts with us and sending people to Washington that care as deeply about that extraordinary burden of responsibility that one takes when they are elected to serve in the United States Congress. And that is an oath to a constitution, not a party, and it's a commitment to a country, not just one community. Somehow it's embedded in me that I always think we can do better. I'm always hopeful. I know there's nothing that is impossible. I mean nothing when people work together. And nothing is possible when people don't. I've never been more optimistic about the generation that's rising, that's activated, that's energized, that's participating, that are critical thinkers, that understand how technology can either bring us together or divide us, and most importantly, seem much more willing to work together than even some of my age group. Radical pragmatism means you have to deal with what is, not what you want things to be. And it's great to dream, it's great to try to create a movement, but that eliminates the opportunity to problem solve. And radical pragmatism is something that I think we all have to practice, Democrats, Republicans, everybody in elected office, because we don't have the liberty to simply get on a soapbox and preach. You know, we have to actually get things done. And I think that should be embedded in every single congressional office. Radical pragmatism is joyful, because if we did a little bit more of that, we'd get more done, and we'd most importantly restore faith in this remarkable, remarkable country. It has been so enriching to serve you and to get to meet you, to know that Democrats and Republicans here in Minnesota are doing it the right way. I've been serving in this office now for 6 years. I can't remember one occasion where a single constituent who disagreed with me treated me with anything but respect. Could be disagreement, could see things quite differently, could even be frustration, but that's a hallmark of how we do things here. And I want to thank everybody who approached me in the street or like at the grocery store and at farmers markets, at small businesses that I'd visit, for being so decent and reminding me why I'm so lucky to represent Minnesota's 3rd, and showing our country, you know, what's possible when people simply act like Minnesotans. 6 years have been great, but I also believe that we should play a small role in serving our country and then move on and make space for others to serve and bring their ideas and perspectives and backgrounds, and that's why it's time. To all of you who made this possible, to all of you who shared your ideas and your criticisms, they've helped me, they've helped this country. And to those that have come before me, thank you for affording me the blessings of being raised in this state of Minnesota. It has been a joy, it has been a privilege, and now I look forward to being represented by some of you in the future. Keep the faith, and remember that optimism is just as contagious as fear.